In honour of Black History Month in the UK, which is in October, I thought that I would talk about my favourite black authors. I'm an English literature student, as you might be able to tell from the obnoxious number of books behind me, because I really like these books anyway, and I would love to talk about them with you. Yes, I am aware that it is November 1st, so I have missed the deadline by a day, but it's not like Black history can only be celebrated and looked at during October, so I thought I would do it anyway. The first book I would like to talk about is Jean Toomer's Cain. So Cain is a collection of poetry and short story prose. It's divided into 3 sections. The first is life in the rural South, the second is about the city, and then the third is a semi-autobiographical story called Cabness. It takes a lot of inspiration from traditional African American and jazz songs. A lot of it is about the rural South and the racism and also the Negro cultures. And interestingly, for a male author, he actually explores a lot of women's stories who experience rape or objectification or just like difficulties in relationships to do with their race. It is essentially, it is about what it means to be, or possibly more importantly, to be perceived as a Negro in a post-slavery world. Though Touma isn't often included in the literary canon of modernism, he actually fits right in with all of the themes of modernity. It's looking at, a single person's presence in a technological, modern, and increasingly urban world, and the relationship between racial identity and how that links to technology. So it covers a lot of different subjects in really interesting ways, but quite simply, I absolutely adore this book. I would say that Touma is one of my favourite writers, full stop. Top 3. He might even be my favourite. I absolutely adore his writing style. I did study this book last year. I wrote an essay on the masculinity in the book, so it's really interesting how it treats gender roles. It could be considered fairly sexist. I mean, it is coming from the 20s, but personally I really feel that it's interrogating gender expectations. He's laying it bare in such a way that I think allows you to criticize it, and he also does that from he looks at masculinity and how being perceived as a man, particularly how to be perceived as a man when you're black, is really integral to all of those themes as well. The more I studied it, the more I loved it. I find his writing just utterly infinite. I feel like you can get so much out of it. You can read it once and really enjoy the aesthetic of the whole, but then if you reread it, I think you just find something new every time, and I just think every word has been carefully chosen, and it's just so beautiful. So for example, I just really like this passage of description at the beginning of I suppose it's a poem, it's somewhat like a prose poem. That's the interesting thing, he really spans different, he doesn't really care if it's a poem or a short story or prose or whatever it is, he just sort of writes in this really beautiful way. So it's a sort of prose poem called 7th Street. It's got some words that I can't say in it, so I will just skip over those. 7th Street is a bastard of prohibition and the war, a crude-boned, soft-skinned wedge of life, breathing its loafer air, jazz songs and love, thrusting unconscious rhythms, black reddish blood into the white and whitewashed wood of Washington, stale soggy wood of Washington. He just has a wonderful way with words that has been hugely inspiring for me as a writer, and also just I really enjoy reading it. He writes fairly simply. I think it is quite easy to read his writing, but it's incredibly deep within that simplicity, which I think is a beautiful and incredibly intelligent thing. I think I'm going to have to stop talking about Cain now, because I just can't express how much I just think it's beautiful. My second recommendation is called This Bridge Called My Back, which is a collection of writings edited by Cherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa. I probably said her name terribly, I really apologise. It's a collection of feminist writings by radical women of colour. That is their self-ascribed title. So it's not actually just black writers, it also has contributors who are Native American, Asian American, and Latin American. It has a huge variety of writing styles. It has casual and more academic essays, it has poetry, prose fiction, and then it also has recorded speech dialogue. It's mostly focusing on race, and particularly race with regard to gender, but then it is also really intersectional within that. It looks at sexuality and homosexuality, class, education, all of these things that can affect those elements. It, really embraces how complex the issues of feminism and race are. So what I loved about this book was that it has a huge range of perspectives. As I said, it has contributors from all sorts of different cultures, and it looks at both the differences and the similarities between these various women's experiences. What I particularly enjoyed was that it's both philosophical and theoretical as well as practical. So it's looking at really general questions such as what is feminism and how can it be intersectional, but then it also looks at the really practical side of things, like what can we do as women, what can we do as activists, and how can we change our daily lives, that kind of thing. As a white person who tries to practice intersectional feminism, I found it super, super educational. I consider myself fairly well read in these sorts of issues, but even so, this book really opened my eyes and changed my views on certain things about privilege and how to address these issues. So it is important to be aware that it is quite old now. It was written in 1986, so it's 31 years old. It's still really, really relevant, scarily relevant. Even though obviously it doesn't address contemporary issues, even so it's really important to learn about the history of it and the roots of our discourse and activism that we practice today. One of the things I really loved about it was that it had so many different literary forms. It makes it so genuinely exciting to just sit and read because it keeps changing its own tone. And also that it celebrates activism in different modes. It's saying you can write an essay or you can write poetry. It's beautifully saying that you don't have to be academically educated to have a voice and to have something to say. It's really celebrating the fact that everyone has an experience and everyone has a way of telling that experience. It's just a really beautiful and educational book that I really enjoyed reading and would thoroughly recommend, particularly for any white feminists out there who want to be better educated on these issues and being intersectional. And my third book is Black No More by George Schuyler. This is a science fiction book from 1931 in America. It says in the preface that, it's undoubtedly addressed to the people who at the time there was a lot of research going into technological ways to transform black people into white people, which sounds absolutely shocking today. But this was a genuine area of science that was getting funding. The premise of the book is that a black man develops a technology that turns black people white. So it is really a direct response to what's happening at the time. And then, in true science fiction form, it goes through the political and social implications of what this would actually mean if everyone who was black could suddenly turn themselves white. It's explored through the lens of one black man who, without giving any spoilers, rises to power in a very interesting way. So what I loved about this book was, first of all, it's science fiction. Science fiction is undoubtedly my favourite genre, so I just loved the whole speculative what-if science side of things, as well as the fact that it's really political and he does not hold back whatsoever. It's really funny because it's basically one long satire. It's very tongue-in-cheek, revealing the ridiculous nature of racism and all of the things to do with it. And what's really interesting actually is that he doesn't just have one target. He attacks black organizations as much as he attacks white organizations. It really becomes a book about attacking political systems and power, as well as racism and scientific research. It's funny, it's satirical, it's easy to read, it's very simply written, and it's just sort of an easy way to get into these ideas of racism and politics and stuff, because it directly addresses the ideas of racial difference and sort of being colorblind and whether that's a thing and how power manifests itself regardless of race as well. It's got some amazing political takedowns, which I literally just wrote Trump next to. It's terrifyingly relevant today. You're literally reading it going, this could be about Trump. This is really scary. You'll just be reading it going, damn, he went there, he said that. Those are my top 3 books by black writers. However, I have read worryingly few black writers, and the few that I have read have all been American. I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that there's not many black writers on my literature course, and when I do study black writing on my course, it tends to be books that like directly address blackness or slavery or racism. They're always put in there as a kind of, oh look, now we've got a black writer writing about blackness. Like, you never get a black writer who's just part of the canon because they deserve to be part of the canon because they're a wonderful writer. I was very lucky that Jean Toomer was included on my course, but that's very rare. So I would really, really love to read some more black writers just to enjoy their writing and not always be a token black person on the literature course kind of thing. So I would really love it if you guys could recommend me some. If there are any black writers that you have particularly enjoyed or any books by them. I'm aware of kind of like the big canonical writers such as Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin, and I'm also aware of current writers such as Zadie Smith, who's actually on my course later on in the year, and also people like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So I'm aware of those people, but if you have particular recommendations by them, like if there was a book that you particularly enjoyed by them, then let me know. I don't know when I will read these recommendations because the problem with doing an English literature course is that you literally never have time for reading. But certainly I will note them down and I will read them one day when I get the chance. And let me know down in the comments or tweet me them if you like. Also, if any of you happen to have read these books, do let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. And if anyone goes away and reads them after watching this video, then also let me know. I'd really, really love to hear your thoughts. So thank you for watching. I hope you like my recommendations. And also I thank you in advance for any recommendations that you can give me. Bye bye.